So you should get that message. So we are now recording because that way you'll be able to watch this episode in our playlist of previous digging in episodes on our TPS Southern Region website. And we will provide you with the link later in this episode. So I'm going to go off and begin by just sharing my screen so you can see our kind of introductory slideshow. And let me let me just begin. Okay, so can you see the slides? Is that good? All right. So this is just some housekeeping issues. Again, welcome. Thank you for coming. Uh, if you're not speaking, if you wouldn't mind to keep your mic muted, just so we can eliminate some of the feedback. But please, if you do want to join in, you can definitely unmute yourselves to speak to the group. Uh, Please put your names down there if they aren't already, just so we know who's speaking. Sometimes there's just like a phone number that shows up and we don't know to whom to give credit. Um, Please feel free to participate in the chat function. Just drop any kinds of comments that you want in there. We usually have a pretty lively conversation going on. You can respond to what other people have said that way. And you can also do the thumbs up, hand clapping, any kinds of things like that. We do not have a poll for today, but maybe next time. So you can follow along. We have our digging in materials. We have created an album on the TPS Southern Region group on the TPS Teachers Network. So if you do want to follow along with that, you can access that from this link here. And Ashley is going to copy this link and put it into the chat box so that if you would rather just wait till it shows up there and click on it, then you'll be free to do that. And this is just where you can get to the newsletter and then the episode and previous episodes. And also, we would love your feedback. We do have a very short survey that if you would like to get PD credit for attending today's webinar, just fill out this very short survey on a Google form. And that is another link that Ashley will be putting into the chat box. And if anyone needs it at the end, just let me know and I'll make sure to pop it back into the chat box at the end. And then, of course, we will be back again. Of course, this says today. We're also going to be doing this in December. I know December fills up really quickly with all sorts of things on your calendars, but we will be meeting in December. That's going to be the 11th of December, same time. And if you'd like to register for that, it's going to be a good one. We're going to talk about math-based primary sources. So a little bit more interdisciplinary kinds of things. And yeah, you will also be announcing this through our regular channels of communication, our social media, TPS Teachers Network, etc. So I am going to close the PowerPoint and go ahead and share our newsletter to talk about that for just a few minutes before we get into the real meat of today's episode. So, like I said, we haven't really been coming up with themes in 2025 like we did for our previous issues, but we kind of have started thinking more along those lines, starting with this particular issue right here. And that is because we are joined today by a couple of our sub-awardees to talk about social studies methods and how you can embed TPS kinds of strategies into your courses. And so that's kind of our loose theme for this month. And you already heard that next month's theme is going to be math-based primary sources. And we always like to peruse the TPS Teachers Network and find different interesting conversations and highlight those and bring them some more attention in our newsletters. And so for this month, I was really kind of intrigued by the conversations about what the difference between a primary source and a copy of a primary source or a facsimile of a primary source, or what happens when you modify a primary source by cropping it or by maybe altering the language a little bit to make it easier to understand. And so there are questions always on how far can you go with that before and then how do you let people know that you've modified a primary source? Is it still a primary source, even if it's not an authentic primary source? And so there's a whole lot of different kinds of gray areas when it comes to that. We tend to have a very broad, welcoming idea about using modified primary sources if that's what you need to do in order to engage your students and your public. And so there are some thoughts, some links to conversations in this opening article here. And so we have thought about how we might support getting people engaged in primary sources, even if it's slightly changing them from the original, and just how do you make it how do you make it apparent that what you have done to it? Because you don't want to just show a manuscript of cursive handwriting from the 15th century in another language and expect people to make a lot of sense out of that right away. You need to modify it in order to use it. And so we like to have a more practical bent to that, but there's all sorts of different and really good questions there. So that was kind of what we were noticing in the TPS network this time. Now, I'm going to skip over page 2 real quickly just to show you that our lesson idea, which is going to come at the end of today's lesson, today's episode is about a certain strategy approach for analyzing a primary source that has to do with the connection between football and Thanksgiving. And, that's coming up really soon. So we thought it'd be very timely to work that into this issue. Now, the middle page, our featured project, is looking at a teaching with, the title is Teaching with Primary Sources, but this is Dr. Avington Medeiros and Dr. Eva Marie Kane of Torrey University in Alabama, who are one of our very first subawardees for the TPS Southern Region for this project. The first awardees we talked about in last month's issue, and so we really are happy to have them here in person, virtually, to talk more to us about how their project is going. And so I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and I will enable it just in case if you wanted to. You could share your screen or you can have me open up anything that you would like. But I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Medeiros and Dr. Kane from Troy University.
Hi, I'm Abby Medeiros, and
I'm Eva Kane.
as Stacy said, we are at Troy University. We both work, well, I work in actually the history department with history and social studies education students, and then
I work in the Department of Teacher Ed.
So, I guess a little bit, Dr. Kane and I, because here at Troy, you need a content advisor, which is me, and then an education advisor, which is Dr. Kane. So we work very closely with the same students, same cohorts. So being able to see the same students, it's easy to recognize where they need more or less support. And one thing that I love to use in my history classrooms are primary sources, and that's something that our methods courses, which is what I teach, didn't have very much of. So our Office of Sponsor Programs here at the university sent us the Library of Congress grant link for us just to kind of peruse and think about. And we got together and decided that this would be a good area, not just for my history and social science ed students, but also Dr. Kane, because she works with all secondary ed students.
So my background is in social studies. I taught high school for 11 years and then I, moved to the university. And so now I teach all of the secondary ed majors. And so across all areas, they were also lacking in primary sources. And then as a social studies person, I was like, this is something that is very important. Like we really need to flesh this out with everybody. So we took some of that background and worked together to develop it for her methods and materials class and then my curriculum and instruction. So that way we could push it a little bit of it out to everybody, to all of the majors.
The idea, of course, is like Dr. Kane said, number one, we want all of our education students leaving the university, heading into internship, and graduation, of course, with some background in primary source education. And especially, with the history and social studies majors, we are hitting it extra hard in my methods class, but the exposure for all of our secondary majors in Dr. Kane's curriculum class, was really important piece of it, just to make sure that we are creating these group of teachers that feel comfortable using and teaching with primary sources. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that looks like in your class?
So what we did in my curriculum class is we used John Lewis. We just had a building. What was the building's name before?
Bibb Graves,
Bibb Graves.
named for a governor.
And so it was a building that we had on campus, but they just changed the name maybe like a year ago. And so we pulled some primary sources from the website. And I went over, of course, in the beginning, I went over like, what is a primary source? How do we use it? Went through the website. And then we pulled some sets of primary sources and had them kind of go through it and talk about like who he was, like why did we change the name, things like that. And so they got, a little bit of Troy history in there along with their understanding of primary sources.
I will also do want to point out when we say all secondary history majors, we mean the PE majors.
Yeah.
Even got a little bit, and it's fun. The preview for this newsletter, was the football part, and that's a great way for even our PE teachers to be able to tie in. I know at my daughter's middle school, she's seventh and eighth grade, middle school, every Tuesday and Thursday in the PE class, they actually do focus on some reading skills. So, how much fun is that to be able to tie in some primary source education, even for our PE majors, because that's not something we usually see at all.
Yeah, it was rough. It was about how you think it was.
Well, I think that is fascinating because I imagine most people, even the ones who use primary sources in their discipline, would think that PE teachers wouldn't need them. But no, you are telling everybody can use these resources and make students engaged in the subject matter. So I think that's great. It's great to hear, even if it's seeds that you're sowing that may pay off further down the road.
But speak a little bit more about the methods class.
Mhm.
That's, of course, we're going to go more in depth with teaching of primary sources. We started out with some of the Library of Congress modules, just the teaching modules and how the students work through it, just to get a little more familiarity, number one, with the website, since we are going to be using it. And number two, it's interesting, even with history and social studies majors, the backgrounds. Some students were AP or IB students in high school, and so they love primary sources and they can analyze. And then other students don't have that background. And so being able to use those initial modules that the Library of Congress has, just to help them work through primary sources and the basic analyzing and things, that was a lot of fun. And then another component of the methods course is, of course, they are placed in schools for their hours, but the methods course is right before internships. So it's a lot of teaching hours. And so in class, we would use the Library of Congress primary source analyzing tool. It's just a simple little worksheet. And then they would go and use that in their placement classrooms, just to get some good experience doing it with seventh graders and eighth graders and understanding kind of the explicit guiding that the students need to do or the teachers need to do, my students, the student teachers need to do as they help, seventh and eighth graders, because every one of the semester is actually in a middle school placement. Navigate primary source, understanding primary sources. So it's been a lot of fun to work with students in the classrooms. Monday is our kind of classroom day. We work with primary source. We talk about we've done packets, question, all kinds of things dealing with primary sources, and then they are able to take that to the schools Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on their teaching days, and then hear the feedback about what they are learning as they are learning to use primary sources in their instruction.
Yeah, that means it's incredibly fresh on their minds. That's amazing that you have that kind of immediate modeling payoff there in the classroom. That's very well designed. Very,
Well, thanks.
yeah.
That's the goal. Um, I'll just talk a little bit about so the semester is ending. We have one more week of classes, and so at the start of this project of ours, we had students do surveys on their familiarity with primary source instruction, and then Dr. Kane's already done hers, and next week I'll do mine. We'll have the students do an exit survey. And I really can't wait to kind of get into it and look at data. I'm actually a qualitative person, so I want them to write answers out. It's the history major in me. So I can, I enjoy, last week, one of them was just telling me in particular about how much she feels she has grown as an educator in using primary sources to really help the students come to conclusions rather than just telling them.
That's just what you want to hear, isn't it? Just empowering them to think like a historian, instead of feeling like they have to just always be on the passive side. So that's incredible. We couldn't have said it better ourselves. I'm kind of curious about what maybe some of their favorite parts have been, favorite primary sources or favorite parts of the Library of Congress website, or favorite kinds of strategies, or ones that you think have worked the best in the classroom with your student teachers.
I like the pre-made sets. I can talk about that because when I was looking through it, like that, how they were all just grouped together. Like I didn't think until we talked to you about it, and then I showed the kids, and they're like, "Oh," so I was like, "All you gotta do is just search up this." And so I think a lot of them just like the sets because then they don't have to really think about it or like do all the digging.
I think it takes some of the intimidation work
Yeah.
out of it because I think a lot of times, especially because we are dealing with pre-service teachers, they don't even have any education experience yet, so it can feel
Mm,
intimidating to put together
yeah.
a primary source set. So like Dr. Kane just used the pre-made sets for my history and social studies. We started with the pre-made sets. We used them, we talked about what was in them, and then, the gradual release thing. Eventually they made their own
Oh,
set.
good.
But yeah, the pre-made sets I think are really good at removing a lot of that intimidation factor.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. We always think about it in terms of saving people time, because teachers never seem to have enough time, because of all of the expectations laid on them. And so we are like, why reinvent the wheel when somebody has already pulled together a set on this topic? So I'm really glad to hear that they're using those and seeing just how useful those things are meant to be. That's good. That's good. What about any kinds of challenges that they're having with the website? Because we all have our challenges with this website, of course.
Um, I would say my world history friends have to dig a little deeper. Here in
Yes.
Alabama, seventh, eighth graders world history, and like I said, it's kind of luck of the draw, kind of. But all of my history and social studies students ended up in middle school land this year, and so that was a bit more challenging. But we were able to do it. It just got to dig a little more, I think, than maybe like say. 10th grade, which can do Alabama history. And ninth grade is a more modern world history. So, it's easy to pull World War One, World War Two artifacts. Whereas, seventh and eighth grade, middle school grades, are older world history, more ancient history.
Yeah, we do hear from world history teachers a lot that they wish there were more resources for them. And we absolutely feel for them and wish we had better news. Of course, the Library of Congress, being the research arm of Congress, is gonna be a lot more stocked in its US history materials. And it's kind of amazing how many collections it does have that touches on world history, but at the same time, it may not touch on the parts of the world history curriculum that you have to cover. Like there's not an ancient Egypt, it's not like a,
Right.
a
Yeah.
ready-made, okay, now we're going to medieval Europe. You kind of have to, you really do have to dig with that. And yeah, I can maybe email you a couple links that might have some
We've
resources.
managed to find
But you
them.
found stuff too. Good, good,
Yeah.
good. It's
And like I said, and
a little
then
harder.
always using like the Library of Congress analyzation tool. That. So even when, they had a little bit of trouble, we could say, okay, well, what can we use? And then they were able to look at it through that because sometimes, a lot of times, I mean, we've all been senior level college students. It's just kind of changing the search query, changing what you're looking for to, and then you can find what you need.
Right, right. Just tweak those search filters. Well, good. I'm glad. So what's next for your project moving into the next semester?
We are gonna, so this was our first run, right? This is our first try. There were some kinks that we had to work out. And so next semester, we're gonna sort of do it again and see what we can change, what worked well, what didn't, try and tweak whatever we can. And then, see what the kids enjoyed the most, what they like, talk to them about it, and then run it again and see how we can make it better, how we can improve.
Ultimately, the goal, and this is going to be scaled out, of course, a few years, is to be able to take this methods class, especially, but then also Dr. Kane's, like we said, PE teachers, and be able to scale this into a type of professional development that we can use with local school systems. Now, it's down the road a little bit. We've got to, get everything ironed out with our classes, but that would be the ultimate, maybe 3, 5 year goal for this project.
That'd be excellent. Yes, excellent indeed. Um, any takeaways that you could share so far? I know you said that, you're still in the kind of first phase of this, but any kinds of things that surprised you or things that you'd wish you'd known or anything like that?
I think I picked, so this semester we did John Lewis Hall because we changed the name. And so it popped into my head before I really started digging. I think the next semester, when I come up with a different topic for us to do some research on, I think I'm going to look through the website more to figure out what you have before I kind of pick my topic to kind of dig around to see what else I can link to the area. I think that might
This
serve me
building.
better. Right, huh?
This building was built by CWA. New deal.
Oh, see, now we can do that. He told me that like 2 weeks ago when we were walking on campus. And see, like that would be,
Oh
I would like to
yeah,
do
New
that.
I
Deal
know
stuff.
my office building is a New Deal office building. So there's a plaque and everything in the hall.
Troy University, which I must say I didn't even know about before we got your proposal, where you're located and what kind of demographic you serve, those kinds of things.
So, I mean, we're very rural. We're in the southeast corner of Alabama. The university has been here since 1887. We started out as a Troy Normal Teacher College and have been Troy State for most of the 20th century. In 2005, we became Troy University. But actually, Troy University is very global in that we've got bases serving military all over the world. We actually have many satellite branches here in the United States as well. But what in our in this corner of Alabama, we are the only teacher preparation program. Most of the teachers in Southeast Alabama are coming through Troy University. We're being able to make our education department is being able to make a big impact in the region.
So I just want you to know that Ashley wrote in the chat that she just looked up your university and she said it was beautiful.
Well,
So
thank you.
is you have a pretty campus there?
Yeah, we do. We have a very beautiful campus.
Fantastic. And what is the connection to John Lewis, if you don't mind my
So John
asking?
Robert Lewis, for anyone that doesn't know, he was a major part of the civil rights movement, Selma to Montgomery March. He actually grew up about 15 minutes from here.
Really?
hmm Yeah,
Okay,
he
there's the
was.
connection.
Martin Luther King Jr. referred to him as the boy from Troy.
Oh. Okay,
Several.
well, if Kira were here, she would know this. Yes, because obviously we've heard of John Lewis in the national sense, his
Right.
leadership in Congress, and he even came to Nashville one year and spoke, and I got to see him there. But I never, other than Alabama, I didn't know where exactly he was from. So you're a corner of Alabama.
Yes, yes, he's from about 15 minutes from here. So,
All right, well then, yeah, you should definitely rename a building after him,
yeah.
at least. I
Yes.
think they renamed a street in Nashville, I think, after him. Am I correct?
Oh,
Elizabeth is shaking her head. Alex is shaking her head. Yeah, we also renamed a street for Rosa Parks. Um, so I wish we need a Diane Nash Street in Nashville, I believe, but she's still alive. She's one of our local civil rights leaders in Nashville. Um,
also just to plug, Troy University Montgomery, which is our campus about 45 minutes from here, has a
okay.
great museum on Rosa Parks. It's
Well, that
very,
would make sense,
yes,
Montgomery.
yeah.
Well, we're going to be visiting Montgomery next March for the NCHE conference.
Mhm.
Yes.
And so hopefully we'll get to see some of your representatives there and some of the viewing public. So I was wondering if anyone else had any questions for Doctors Medeiros and Kane while we have them here. Feel free to pipe up or pop it in the chat. And, you know, if not, we can go ahead and think more about what would interest PE teachers in terms of primary sources. Okay, so I just had one last question, and that is, how did you choose? I know you said that you tend to have the same kinds of students, and I know that you both come from history, social studies backgrounds, but how did you first start collaborating? Like,
Oh,
did you just kind of seek each
we
other out? Were you thrown together?
So we got hired at the same time, so we are at the same new faculty orientation.
Oh, okay, so from the
Our
beginning.
Yeah,
yeah.
our children are the same ages, so it's a small town. You can't avoid each other. And then we both, since we are in the same committee meetings or working with the same education students, so it just kind of just
Because we're both their advisors, so it's constant phone calls of, do you know what this kid did? Did you? And so then it just kind of naturally happens, like, oh, like we should do some research, and we've been doing a pretty good job the last couple of years, and we just kind of we kind of built off our dissertations, and then that ended, and then we thought, what else we wanted to look at. So we've just been kind of rolling through it with whatever ideas we can come up with.
Great. And how have your colleagues in your departments responded to this new kind of curriculum? Do they know anything about it?
So in my department, I'm the only secondary ed person.
Oh,
Like
so
there's
you are
certain,
the department. Okay.
yeah. So we did hire a new guy for math, but he mostly has to do like math with the elementary people. So really it's just kind of me at this point. And I think it's great. So
So the department all
yep.
agrees.
Yep.
Well, and then actually, I've had a history faculty colleague talk with me actually last week about some of his history education graduate students working these kinds of things into his graduate class, just to
Great.
instead of just papers and like graduate school, he was thinking more in terms of teaching and prepping them teaching, and so it's a great conversation to have. It'll be interesting to see where he
Yeah.
goes with it.
Excellent. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much again for joining us today and taking time out of your busy day to talk about how you are using this subaward, I hate calling it that, subaward, this grant for enhancing the work that you already do. Just embedding these things. It's not an extra thing, it's just enhancing what we already do and really for the end point of teacher and student further engagement. So that's just incredible. Thank you so much. And so at this point, I am going to turn things over to our graduate student, Elizabeth Webb, to tell us about the lesson idea that she created for today. And take it away, Elizabeth.
Great, thank you. Let me get this pulled up. Right, so I did take more of a Thanksgiving approach for this one than what's in the lesson plan, just to show that it can be adaptable, which was part of the point of me choosing this topic. And also I'm just really excited for Thanksgiving. I'm ready for my break. So I'm going to look at using social study methods and especially looking at associations and analysis. So my first thing is I really want this to be interactive. So I just like either type it in the chat or talk out loud. What do you associate with Thanksgiving? And so also feel free as I go through everything, because I use a lot of photos, to stop me if you want to discuss specific ones.
Okay, so family meals is our number one association. Food, of course, being the first word that pops into my mind, but not just regular food, but specific types of food like turkey. Alex's great grandmother's dumplings, which I've never had dumplings at Thanksgiving before, but that sounds like a wonderful family tradition. Um, we're doing cheese this year because my sister doesn't eat meat. So we're gonna have thanks for cheese giving. Uh, yes, we'll have pumpkin pie as well. That to me just kind of symbolizes Thanksgiving. So all these words are food related, and none of them are sports related. Which we don't. I don't watch sports. I know that everybody else who works in my office does, but I'm the only one who doesn't watch football. Alex watches football over Thanksgiving. Um,
Yeah, I'll chime
I,
in. I'll chime in and say that my mom's Thanksgiving, I come from a divorced parents, so my mom's Thanksgiving is always the weekend before and generally falls on the Vanderbilt Tennessee football game. So I do think about that and associate that with Thanksgiving. So
why not? Apparently, the association is a lot older than what we had previously thought. Um, I I do a charity 5 mile walk every Thanksgiving morning for homeless food shelters in Nashville, because my sister drags me. So after we've burned all those calories, we then replace them all. So that's my sports slash food Thanksgiving combination. And I'm also looking forward to the break, Elizabeth.
So the first one I kind of had was just a general photo. Um, because it showed everything. I also really like the mask because historically, during like the 1920s, when this specific image was created, there was a huge tradition of Thanksgiving masking. There's a lot of sources about that on the Library of Congress. Like, there's a whole blog post about Thanksgiving masking. Um, and I like that that's like a very central feature in this image because, that's no longer a thing. And I don't know. I just think it's interesting that that once was such a central part of Thanksgiving. Next one I had is turkeys. Um, this particular image is from 1929, and in the center is Calvin Coolidge. Um, I think this would also be a great picture to do with the ESP sheet that I'll introduce later, because like especially with like the economic and political sides, this was taken 1 month after the economic crash of 1929. So having students contrast um this almost like glorious image of these two fat turkeys during the beginning of an economic down in America. Let's see what's going on in the chat.
Well, I was just about to ask, can you please tell me one more time which one, who's in this picture?
Calvin Coolidge, the president,
Which one is he?
he's in the middle.
So he's n not holding a turkey.
I guess he's too good to hold turkeys.
Love that the other ones are holding turkeys, I have to say.
But my next one is food. So my particular favorite Thanksgiving food is stuffing. So I had to represent my favorite Thanksgiving food. Although I've never actually had it like in a bird, like how they depict in the sandwich. I've always had it as like a side dish. So that was interesting. Turkey trots. Like Dr. Graham's 5-below. um, it's very popular where I live now. So now I associate Thanksgiving with turkey trots.
Yeah, the one I do is called the Boulevard Bolt, and there are always participants who dress up like turkeys.
The Macy's Day Parade. My family watches it the whole time as it goes, and then it turns into like the dog show. So very familiar with that. This particular float is the Tom Turkey float, and it is actually the longest running Macy's Day float. Um, Another particularly close one to me, my family plays bingo on Thanksgiving. It weirds everyone out. Um, but it's like my favorite family tradition is our Thanksgiving bingo game. Oh, that's cute that your daughter will be in the parade. I think some of my friends' high school band performed. So, it's despite being a very localized thing, it's become a whole like nationwide event. And of course, finally, think football. So this is the particular image that the newsletter was centered around. So it was created in 1930, but it depicts the first ever football game played on Thanksgiving in 1876 between Yale and Princeton. Um, and like I said earlier, we were discussing this image using our ESP analysis worksheet.
Oh,
So
wait. I have to interrupt because I saw this image from the newsletter. Elizabeth, I saw it and I only just now noticed the Y's and the P's on their sweaters. Can you turn it back one slide so that we can get a good look at that? That is so helpful.
I do have an up close image of like that
I
particular
guess they're
bit.
slightly different colors too. Navy versus a more of a dark green. All right.
I like their little
That
hats.
I don't know why I didn't notice that before. That's the cool thing about primary sources, I guess.
Yeah,
All right. Sorry, as you
it's all
were.
good. So ESP stands for Economic, Social, and Political. I do want to give a shout out to Yohiro Williams for designing this sheet for us. Um, I think it's my favorite analysis worksheet just because I think it is so transferable. And I think these are particularly good topics for looking at history. So I also had specific questions to go in beyond the questions that are asked at the top of the page. So for our economic, I wanted to have students, look at the background. And especially it's much easier to see when it's zoomed in for how many people actually came to this game. And when I was doing background research on Thanksgiving as like a day to play football, it was particularly chosen specifically by the NFL. So I'm not sure about the college football tradition because it was a day that everyone had off. So that everyone would be free and be able to come and spend money on to watch. I think it's like the Lions and the Bears were like the first NFL. And so um and I don't know much more about Thanksgiving football. And so it'd be interesting to see if like the PE teachers or like people who are really into football, how they think about, you know, watching and playing football and how that affects like the economic aspect of Thanksgiving. You also get a really nice view of the background, which is my favorite part of the image. I like the little house on the hill. I mean, all the trees. It's a very beautiful image. Um, and then for our social, I had it looking at depictions of masculinity. Um, because there's this huge brawl. Like, how does that reflect, you know, the social aspects of the time? I also was like, it comes more later, but also the uniforms as a form of masculinity. Um, but I have a better slide that depicts that later on. Let me check the chat again. Well, it was raw.
Yeah, I
You know,
think it's really funny that this one guy, the people over on the left, is just fully punching the other dude, which is absolutely a flag now.
yeah, and the ref not focusing on him, but all the
Yeah,
other people.
Yeah, is that the referee? And
I
he
would
looks
assume.
like it just wandered in from the wrong bleachers. He should be watching a cricket game or something like that. That's hilarious. Um,
It's it's a unique image. And then for political, I had it focused on uh an earlier time. So Lincoln, George Washington actually gave the first proclamation for Thanksgiving, but the one that actually really stuck on was Lincoln's in 1863, which is cut onto the page not very well because it was on two different pages. So I did my best to make it look one. Um, but how did that affect, how Thanksgiving was developed, which could have led to this that football being a part of the Thanksgiving tradition. Um, Especially since the football game itself took place in 1876, so that's right around Reconstruction's ending. So if you are particularly focused on Reconstruction in your class, maybe how Reconstruction ideals were built into Thanksgiving. Um, I yeah, I think he addresses Thanksgiving in the bottom. And it's also a good time to talk about how we have changed Thanksgiving dates over the time. Um, Thanksgiving wasn't on the third Thursday until FDR, for economic reasons. Because I think he says the last Thursday of November. But and so I just want to finish off with a few of the highlights of other economic, social, and political aspects of football. So for economic, I have cigarette cards. This was really big, especially for baseball. Um, the Library of Congress has a whole collection on the baseball cigarette cards for those PE teachers. Um, he's in Yale, so it felt very transferable. But you
Do you
know,
think teachers would be comfortable sharing these with students because they advertise cigarettes? I mean, it might be funny,
you cut the
just kind of
cigarette.
shocking to students, to see this kind of association because luckily we live in a time with a much less, the rate of smoking in the average populace, I believe, to be a lot smaller, right? But
I think it'd
and
be
that doesn't
interesting.
is that looks like that football looks very different. Uh, I think that's interesting too.
Yeah, I think this is from 1901. So this is when football was still played more like rugby. Um,
Yeah, it does look like a rugby ball.
but
So
I would be
what's a cigarette card?
so
Just
they came in
wondering.
packs of cigarettes to encourage people to buy cigarette packs.
Oh, really?
It's like
Hmm.
collect these
Yeah,
cards every time you buy a pack of cigarettes.
Interesting.
I'd like to see how they connect like modern day like Pokemon cards and
Yeah,
like other like because like they're still like a modern like football card, but they're not as popular as like Pokemon cards.
Well, now people collect their what fantasy football players, right? So
That was
the media is a little bit different. But I think it's interesting because maybe that shows that this is like it's for an adult audience, maybe, and sports were more for adult audiences. Well, basically most of public life was for adult audiences in 1901, right?
Mhm.
Hmm. Yeah, because the kids were working in the factories. That's right.
For social, I highlighted safety standards. I also think this is where you could bring back that idea of uniforms depicting masculinity and like how our clothes reflect um what we think is important, how we want to have society view ourselves. Um Even, because it is more like a rugby-ish type deal. It's, you know, that's not how rugby player uniforms look anymore. Um so yeah, it was really interesting because I think one of the other social aspects I have on the newsletter is talking about the reintegration of the NFL. Um, I can't remember his name right now. But I think I linked to like a whole post about how the NFL reintegrated. Um, so that was really interesting to learn about because I, football is
It
one of
was
the
Kenny
sports
Washington.
in Washington.
And maybe the PE teachers would know that piece of trivia. I'm gonna have to remember it for the next time I'm asked.
But football is something I always thought of like more as a mixed sport because I grew up watching hockey, and that was very predominantly white. Um, so it was very interesting to see that it was reintegrated. And then for politics, of course, I had to do political cartoons. Football has become a huge metaphor in our society. And it's interesting to see how they transferred that into political cartoons. So in this particular image, the consumer is being stomped by the multiple different industries trusts. I believe this one is from I want to say the 1910s. Yeah, and political football, like it's how we've really integrated these words.
Well, I think it's also interesting because that just shows that some people consider politics to be like a game that requires strategy. You know, I mean, it's obvious when you talk about football, but I mean, is politics supposed to be a game with that you use strategy for? So it's interesting.
You also get to see another edition of how football uniforms have developed. They used to have leather pads, instead of plastic ones. Um, there are more. I think I have more images linked in the newsletter. I just picked the first and last to make it simpler.
Hmm.
But that is all I have for today. Um, it was a fun little deep dive, and I hope everyone else had fun with it too, because I think that's part of the reason I chose this topic was to show that history can be fun and relevant. So if you have any questions, just let me know, and thank you, and happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays.
Thank you so much. That was pretty fun. The funnest that I have with football at this time of year. So thank you for that, Elizabeth. Appreciate it. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful Thanksgiving with or without football, but definitely with food. Yes, and Ashley, I'll have a cheese talk with you later, okay? Because it's more than I can pop into the chat right now. And again, I want to thank our guest speakers, Avington Medeiros and Eva Kane, for joining us from Troy University. And every one of you who could be with us today, thank you so much. And if you are in need of any of the links to the survey form, then just stay on the line afterwards and we'll be happy to pop that back into the chat for you so you don't have to scroll all the way up. Otherwise, this episode is adjourned and I am going to stop the recording. So thanks again.